It was supposed to be just another day on the set of Love and Hip Hop Atlanta. The cast and crew were preparing for another explosive filming session, adjusting cameras, tweaking the lighting, and running through their lines. Everything seemed routine. Drama was the fuel that kept the show alive, and everyone was ready for the next big confrontation. But no one knew that today would be different. Something was about to unfold. Something real. Something so deeply personal that it would leave everyone stunned. In reality television, fans are used to heated arguments, betrayals, and shocking confessions. But this wasn't about ratings. This wasn't scripted. This was raw, unfiltered truth, one that had been buried for far too long. Lil Scrappy, the beloved rapper and longtime star of the show, had built his reputation on resilience. He had survived the rough streets, battled through the cutthroat music industry, and fought his personal demons in front of the world. Fans had watched him struggle with relationships, family, and career setbacks, always rooting for his comeback. But behind the cameras, beyond the polished reality TV persona, there was another side of his life, one that had remained hidden. Until now. The usual buzz filled the studio. Cast members gossiping, crew members setting up equipment. But amidst the chatter, one woman stood apart. She wasn't preparing for a scene. She wasn't laughing with the others. She stood still. Her body tense, her expression troubled. She was Lil Scrappy's assistant, a woman who had been by his side for years, handling his schedule, managing his business, ensuring everything ran smoothly. To most, she was invisible, just another face in the background, but today she refused to stay in the shadows. Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward. The room didn't quiet immediately, but those closest to her sensed something was wrong. Then she spoke. "I've never said this before, but it's time for the truth to come out." Her voice was soft but firm, trembling with emotion yet filled with an undeniable determination. A few heads turned. The usual background chatter faded as more people noticed the shift in the room. "I've kept this to myself for a long time," she continued, her voice struggling to remain steady. "But I can't hide it anymore. People need to know what happened." Silence fell. Crew members glanced at one another, uncertain of what was about to unfold. Cast members, used to scripted drama, could sense this was different. This was real. Some already suspected what was coming. Others braced themselves, knowing that whatever she was about to say would change everything. She took another breath, closed her eyes for a moment as if gathering strength, then spoke the words that sent shockwaves through the room. "There was a time when Scrappy, he physically hurt me." A collective gasp rippled through the set. "When he was drunk, he lost control. And it wasn't just once. It happened more than once." The weight of her words hung in the air. Time seemed to stop. No one moved. No one reacted. Some people looked down, unable to meet her gaze. Others stood frozen, struggling to process what they had just heard. This wasn't another staged argument for Love and Hip Hop. This wasn't a fabricated storyline for higher ratings. This was real. Her eyes filled with unshed tears, but she didn't let them fall. She had carried this weight for too long, and now that she was speaking, she wasn't going to stop. "I didn't want to say anything," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I didn't want to hurt him. But this isn't right. No one should have to go through that, especially not in the name of loyalty." The tension was unbearable. Some cast members shifted uncomfortably. Others exchanged glances, their minds racing. Those who had witnessed glimpses of Scrappy's temper before now struggled with the reality of what they were hearing. She took another breath, trying to steady herself. There were nights when he'd come home after drinking, and his temper would already be out of control. "I never knew what would set him off. It was like walking on eggshells." She paused, as if reliving those terrifying moments. "He didn't know his own strength," she whispered. "I know he didn't mean to hurt me, but when he was drunk, he became someone else. Someone I didn't recognize." Murmurs spread across the room. Some cast members whispered to each other, trying to process the revelation. Others just stared, their expressions a mix of shock and sympathy. This wasn't the Lil Scrappy they knew, or at least not the version they had seen. But for her, this had been her reality. For years. I kept telling myself it would stop. She continued, her voice shaking. That he would change. That it was just the alcohol. But it kept happening. She looked around the room, meeting the eyes of those who dared to look back. I blamed myself for a long time, she admitted. The weight of her confession settled over the set like a heavy fog. This wasn't just another reality TV scandal. This was pain. This was survival. This was the truth, one that could no longer be ignored. I thought maybe I did something wrong. Maybe I triggered him. But now I know it wasn't my fault, and I won't be silent anymore. The weight of her words settled over the room like a heavy fog. This was no longer about reality TV, scripted drama, or on-set tensions. This was real. This was about abuse. A space that once buzzed with casual conversation and the usual pre-show excitement now felt suffocatingly still. Some people avoided looking at her, their gazes fixed on the floor, while others had tears in their eyes. Scrappy wasn't there, but his presence, or rather the weight of the accusations against him, loomed in every corner of the room. For a long time, no one spoke. No one knew what to say. Then, finally, someone broke the silence. "Did you ever tell anyone?" A voice asked, hesitant but firm. She shook her head. "No, I was scared. I didn't want to ruin his career. I didn't want people to turn against him. But I can't keep protecting him at my own expense." At that moment, there was no turning back. The truth was out, and now the world would have to face it. The room remained frozen, as if time itself had stopped. The assistant's words pressed down on everyone present, exposing a reality that had been buried for far too long. And now that the words were spoken, there was no taking them back. A producer finally broke the silence. "Are you saying Scrappy was physically abusive?" The question hung in the air, heavy and deliberate. The assistant swallowed hard. "Yes," she said, her voice no longer trembling. It was steady now, firm with the conviction of someone who had been holding in their pain for too long. "When he drank too much, when he lost control, I was the one who paid the price." A murmur spread through the crew and cast. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others stared at her, their expressions a mix of shock, sympathy, and disbelief. This was a side of Scrappy they had never seen, or perhaps one they had chosen to ignore. "Did anyone else know?" Another voice asked from the back of the room. The assistant hesitated before answering. "Some people suspected," she admitted. "They saw the way he acted when he was drunk, the way his temper flared over nothing. But no one ever asked, and I never told." She took a deep breath, glancing around the room. "I protected him for years. I told myself he was under stress. I made excuses for him. But the truth is, I was scared. I didn't want to ruin his career. I didn't want to be the reason people turned against him." One of the other cast members who had known Scrappy for years shook her head. "I mean, we've all seen Scrappy get angry. He's always had a temper. But this..." She paused, looking directly at the assistant. "Why now? Why are you speaking out now?" The assistant didn't flinch. "Because I can't keep living in fear. Because it wasn't just one night. It happened more than once. And because I know I'm not the only one." A hush fell over the group. Those last words sent chills through the room. "You're saying there were others?" the producer asked. The assistant hesitated, as if debating how much to reveal. "I don't know for sure," she admitted. "But I do know that I wasn't the only one who saw his anger. I wasn't the only one who was afraid of what he might do when he lost control." The realization of what had just happened began to sink in. The energy on set shifted. Some crew members quietly stepped away, unsure of how to proceed. The cast, usually quick to jump into heated discussions, was uncharacteristically subdued. This wasn't just another reality TV scandal. This was something deeper, something real. And then, for the first time since the assistant had spoken, the door to the set opened. A figure stepped inside. Lil Scrappy. The tension in the room skyrocketed. His presence alone sent a ripple of unease through the group. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't joking. He looked serious, more serious than anyone had ever seen him before. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on the assistant. "I heard what you said." His voice was calm but heavy with emotion. "I need to talk to you." The assistant met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "There's nothing left to talk about, Scrappy. I said what I needed to say." "Nah." Scrappy shook his head. "You said a lot, but you didn't say everything." Everyone held their breath. This was the moment. The confrontation that no one had expected, but now no one could look away from. Scrappy took a step closer, his voice lower now. "You know I never meant to hurt you." The assistant's jaw clenched. "That doesn't change the fact that you did." Silence. Heavy, unbreakable. And then, Scrappy said something no one expected. "I need to tell my side of the story." The room braced for what was coming next. Lil Scrappy's assistant breaking her silence wasn't just another reality TV scandal. It was a wake-up call. Too often, abuse in the entertainment industry is hidden behind the glamour, ignored until it's too big to be swept under the rug. But now the truth was out, and there was no turning back. The weight of the moment was suffocating. The assistant had spoken her truth, exposing a reality long hidden beneath the glitz and glamour of the entertainment industry. Now, with Scrappy standing before her, the entire room was frozen in anticipation. This wasn't just a pivotal moment for them, it was a defining moment for the entire Love and Hip Hop cast and crew. "I need to tell my side of the story," Scrappy repeated, his voice lower now, more measured. The assistant stared at him, her expression unreadable. "Your side?" she echoed, her tone a mix of disbelief and exhaustion. "Scrappy, this isn't about sides. This is about the truth." Scrappy exhaled sharply, rubbing a hand over his face. "You think I don't know that?" His voice wavered slightly. "You think I don't sit with this every single day? Messed up. I know that." He paused, struggling for the right words. "I never meant to hurt you like that." A murmur rippled through the room. Some looked shocked that he wasn't immediately denying the allegations. Others remained skeptical, waiting to see just how far he was willing to go in admitting his past. The assistant crossed her arms. "You never meant to hurt me, but you did. Over and over again." Her voice was firm, unwavering. "And every time I told myself it wouldn't happen again, that you'd be better, that you'd change." Scrappy closed his eyes for a moment, inhaling deeply. When he opened them, he looked directly at her. "I was drunk, man. I was out of control. I'm not trying to make excuses, but I was going through a lot. The pressure, the expectations, everything. It got to me." She shook her head. "We all go through things, Scrappy, but not everyone takes their pain out on the people closest to them." A few heads in the room nodded in silent agreement. Scrappy's jaw tightened, and for a moment it looked like he might lash out. But then, something in his expression shifted. His shoulders slumped slightly, and when he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost broken. "I don't even recognize that version of me," he admitted. "But I can't change the past. All I can do is own up to it." The assistant studied him carefully, as if trying to determine whether his words were genuine. "Then own up to it," she challenged. "Publicly?" Scrappy's eyes widened slightly. "You want me to go on camera and say it?" She nodded. "You built your career in the public eye. You did this in the dark, but I had to live with it. Every day. If you really mean what you're saying, then be accountable. Let people see the real you, the good and the bad." For a long moment, Scrappy said nothing. The tension in the room was unbearable. Then finally, he gave a slow nod. "I'll do it." Gasps echoed through the studio. Some of the producers exchanged shocked glances. This wasn't the usual reality TV drama. This was something raw, something real. "You serious?" the assistant asked, still skeptical. Scrappy nodded again. "Yeah, I gotta face this. I owe it to you. I owe it to myself." The assistant exhaled, the tightness in her shoulders loosening slightly. "Then I hope you mean it," she said quietly. "Because once this is out there, there's no going back." The next few days were a whirlwind. Scrappy sat down for an exclusive interview, acknowledging his past mistakes and expressing deep regret for his actions. He admitted that alcohol had fueled his worst behavior and that he had hurt people he loved in ways he could never take back. Some fans supported him, praising his honesty and willingness to take responsibility. Others weren't convinced, calling it a calculated move to save his career. As for the assistant, she chose to step away from the spotlight, finally allowing herself to heal after years of carrying the weight of silence. She didn't regret speaking out. If anything, she hoped her story would empower others who had suffered in silence, showing them that they weren't alone. But for Scrappy, the road to redemption was only beginning. Would he truly change? Would he take real steps toward healing? Or would he slip back into old habits? Only time would tell. One thing was certain: the truth was out. And there was no turning back. If this story resonated with you, or if you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, know that you are not alone. Help is out there. Your voice matters. And just like the assistant, you deserve to be heard.